Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and a very large dollop of Quindy, and maybe a tiny bit of infusion of Justin and John. That's not to say you're a large dollop, Quindy, just to say. I don't know. I just was obviously I shouldn't do extemporaneous fractions. I don't know. What the heck? Hello, everybody. So we're not going to probably be on this model for very long because once again we are going to be... There's stuff that we have to kind of set up. I guess I could just kind of do the putty work, but I think we're going to end up going over to Kitty Cat after I've got this kind of set up because it's going to need to set, right? Base work always needs time to dry. So that be the way it be. You're good with being a large dollop. A generous dollop. That's what I should have said. A generous dollop. See, this is me in the morning when I can't have, immense amounts of caffeine. Not functioning on all cylinders, people. All right, reach over and get a whole bunch of basing stuff. So I work with our modeling paste today because I realized that I don't really need to do that whole irregular groundwork thing with green stuff if I use modeling paste, because then I could just create my irregular basing and also have something to stick my grass into, which sounded really awesome. So I thought I would give it a try. So this is an experimental show today. Totally experimental. I'm going to reach over here and figure out where I put my field grass. I have many grasses and things. Not in this bag. There it is. Much field grass. I keep my basing materials in big tubs. At least some of them. Most of the static grass is in the other room, but there we go. So I've got a couple different colors of field grass. I've got green, and I've got beige. And I've got some static grass that I've got some turf mix. I've got some tiny leaves. Yeah, this is pretty good. Pretty good stuff. All right. So we'll start out with this, and I think I'll get out my little tub of, I have a little tub of static grass. It's kind of brown. It really doesn't matter what color static grass is. They'll sell you all different colors, but when it comes down to it, you can paint it. So it really does not matter what color your static grass is. And as I mentioned previously, you can get synthetic brushes. If you've seen those basting brushes that you can buy for food, with the kind of beige bristles, those are actually the best field grass in my opinion. I find this stuff a bit fine, but this stuff is more in scale. Sometimes it looks more in scale because it is fine. It's just because this stuff is so very fine, it's a pain to work with. So that is the downside of the traditional field grass, is it's realistic, but it's a royal pain. Because it's just so fine, it goes everywhere, and so we're going to grab a tuft of it and see what we can do with it. It's also meant to be trimmed and shaped and stuff, so it's not meant to be its huge long field grass self. So we'll maybe play with a couple different colors. But it also comes in different colors. With the field grass, you can still paint it. I'm more inclined to grab the color that's close to what I want to be. Hey, thanks for the tiny bit, Rax. The tiny bits. Tiny cheer. But yeah, so I'm more inclined to go with the color that I'm kind of feeling is correct. And then just kind of pulling out and pulling down and pulling off the excess hairs so that I get a nice firm clump of this stuff. As I mentioned, I can also trim it down once I've got a nice tuft that doesn't have a lot of hairs hanging off of it. I can trim down the top until it's about what I want it to be, because obviously we don't want the grass to be as tall as the bunny, or maybe you do, but not on this particular base. So I'm going to get rid of my excess hairs, which otherwise, just like dog hair, will get everywhere. Field grass totally does shed. So we've got a couple of different grass options here. It's worth mentioning with static grass, you can also build up static grass on top of static grass to make larger tufts. You don't have to just stop with one layer. All right. So as I discovered previously, I can put actual paint in this to tint it. It will probably increase the drying time, however, because then it's putting more fluid into the paste. So you kind of decide like where you want to be. Let me see here. What do I want to use to manipulate this stuff? I probably want to use a sculpting tool or a silicone tool because it's going to be very easy to get stuff off of the silicone tool. It's easy to wipe off either of these. Modeling pastes are goopy and thick, just like paste, just like the paste you used as a little kid. So it's best to use a tool that you can kind of just wipe off. I can get a little tissue over here so I can do just that before it dries on the tool. And some silicone tools. I'm grabbing angled ones this time because I want to have some right here. Yeah, there are some pretty bad like fieldgrass renditions, this is for sure. I find that the best thing to do is to use a big tuft to trim it down so that it's irregular in shape, and then to kind of spread it out as much as you can. So hopefully using our modeling paste will help us here and not hinder us. Like I said, I haven't done this before, so we'll see how well it works. All right. And I'm not sure, I don't know what the field grass is made of. I'm sure it's a synthetic something or other. But maybe it's dyed camel hair. I have no idea. So let's get some paste on the bunny. Let's try this in the back first. Because I can put longer stuff in the back. That's a lot of paste. But we can't always take it off. So we're going to put a big blob of paste on there. Big paste blob. And I don't really care if it goes over the edge because I can just clean it up with a fingertip. This stuff is messy to work with. It is water soluble. So you can like take a little bit of water on your fingertip and just kind of wipe it up and it'll be okay. Yeah, any organic material you could use for grass tufts. I mean, experiment and see what you like. I've just got field grass, and I know that people do come across it and buy it because they see it in a hobby store, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they try to use it, and they whip their hair out, or they want to, and yeah. So I'm going to just pat this around and kind of use my metal tool here to spread it out. But what I really want is some surface. One, I want to kind of blend in my big stone here that I sculpted her base into. And two, I want to establish some irregular surfaces. Like we were saying that we would want to use with green stuff, we're just using this stuff instead. I mean, you could. Human hair is really fine, though. Typically so fine that it's not easy to work with. But if you can use horsehair, you can use people hair. It's just the horsehair is usually coarser. So it's arguably a better material. 1 second. Get my tools out. I dip them in the water just to keep them from drying. You do need to, however, wipe them off with a tissue to get them clean. It won't just dissolve in the water, essentially. This is the only time I recommend leaving tools in water. And even then, if you're using a tool with like a wooden handle, don't do it too long because you will absolutely loosen up the handle and your ferrule will fall off. And nobody wants a falling off ferrule. So, step 1 is buy a pony. All right. So I want to put some taller graphs behind her. So I'm going to get tuft up here, and I'm going to kind of grab my scissors. Where are you, scissors? I think I'll use the snazzy silicone scissors because it's a little bit sharper than my old beat up scissors. So, and they're purple, so plus bonus here. Let's go back up a little. The other thing you don't want to do is leave your modeling paste open. Bad idea. I actually have been squeezing a little bits of water into mine just to keep it moist. I figure that's probably the biggest kind of danger point on acrylic mediums in general is that they do have a lifespan. So keep them moist. So let's see here. First off, I'm just going to give a general haircut. I'm not going to try to make it, I'm going to try to go in and be really kind of like random about it. And I'm pulling too to get irregular lengths so that I'm getting it more and more of a natural look. I am going to come in and get some of these guys like really kind of short. Too regular. So when you get a too regular, that's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to avoid cutting off a big lock in a very regular way, because then you do get the terrible grass. You get the very terrible grass. So now we have to go into that. One way to do this would be not to go into that. What we would be to mix it up. Mix it into the rest. We still have a little bit too much irregularity there, though. I can see that a little bit. Yeah, exactly. If you bought a pony, you would have no hobby money. Good thought. So I'll go in with the tip of my scissors and I'll just trim out some of these really regular hairs. You could also just try pulling them up a little bit. And now I'm going to try to stick this stuff into here. Now this is the hard part. This is why field grass is so much a pain to work with. All right, now let's trim it all off, giving us another tuft to work with. And now let's see what we can do. Again, I haven't ever done this, so this is just me thinking, hey, you know, part of the problem with field grass is getting it to stick into the base. And one of the things that we might do is to put it into modeling paste. So now I want my forceps, tweezers, because now I want to move around this grass. First of all, I want to take out some ones that didn't stick, because there's definitely some grass that did not get stuck in. And I have time, because this putty is going to take a while to cure. So I have time to figure this out. Get it stuck in, kind of maybe pull it around a little bit. It's very thin, and so it doesn't like to really be pressed down much into the putty. If some of your hairs get away from you, you can try to pick them up and stick them back in at a different angle. If you see some really hopeless hairs, just pull them out. But yeah, obviously there are better like hair equivalents for this, but this is the stuff that people buy. So this is the stuff we're using today. Now we've got a bunch of grass. Now we need to separate it out and start making it look a little bit more organic. However, the putty, the modeling paste is actually sticking this stuff in here really well. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Tweezers. And I can grab little strands, like I said, that are not obeying and try to make them obey. And if not, I can grab them with tweezers and pull them out. Boop, boop. Do not let them stick to their friends. Now, I can go back in and trim this field grass down more. And once I've got all my little strands figured out, having a couple of broken strands isn't a bad thing. because obviously grass would have that feature. Just watch it. You don't want it to look messy and awful. So these are okay. This is looking more like a stand of grass. It's still too regular though. I used to use super glue in Ara, but I'm not a terrific fan of it. What I found with super glue is just that it was hard to adjust it enough that I was happy with it. But super glue certainly works, and it will give you a general effect. And if you're fast and you do a lot of glue, then yeah, it can take a while to set up. But the problem is that I found the capillary action with the glue that I used was too strong. So maybe using a gel glue would be better. But I also like that the modeling paste gives you an irregular ground. So you're accomplishing kind of two things. You're giving yourself a substrate to work your field grass off of. And you're also setting up your basing grass. And now I can continue to work with it. Whereas if I'd used super glue, it would already be done pretty much. And I can also scrape up this stuff if I don't like it. If I'm like, I can mess with it a little bit more. Let's get ourselves, I think I'm focused, but it's hard to say. Oh, Twisted Elm, it's just the field grass that you can buy at hobby stores or railroad stores. Like Woodland Scenics sells it. It's you'll have to go back and watch the VOD to hear my total rundown on it. Long story short, there are other things to use that are easier to work with and might be more organic looking. But because this stuff is what a lot of people have, and because I've got it, I decided to work with it. So now I gotta come in here and start trimming. Pulled it up a little bit. Get your tweezers. It will happen as you're trying to trim. I should really wait until this sets before I come back and trim it. And if it's a little bit crazy or it's a little bit off, don't worry, you can trim some of it. You can just slice these guys right off of here. So, all right, so I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to pull it off by trying to trim it again. We're going to wait. I am pretty happy with the fact that it's kind of an irregular behind her. We're going to trim off a lot of this excess. I do want it taller. I'm going to trim just a little bit just to get the crazy under control. There we go, a little better. You want a little bit of crazy because it's grass. Hello, C-Knot. Man, while I'm playing around with crazy grass, C-Knot with the raid. Crazy grass. Nobody likes crazy grass. We're using Woodland Scenics field grass to create some long grass behind our bunny. And I'm using modeling paste from Liquitex to essentially use it as something to stick the grass into so I can play with it for a little bit before it sets, and also to using it to set up some irregularly shaped groundwork so it's not just flat. I was using green stuff to do that on the front here, but green does take... Thanks, C-Knot. Green does take a while to cure, so I thought I would switch to the modeling paste because I thought it might also be a good way to affix the field grass, which is otherwise kind of a pain to work with. Although, as Inara pointed out, using gel super glue is a solution. I wanted to play with it a little bit more than I've ever gotten to do with super glue. I've never been totally happy with my super glue experiments with this grass. And that's purely to each their own, because if you are happy with your results, then you go with it. Everybody's got their own preferences. So, but the long grass does give her a nice backdrop, which is sweet, and I like it. So we're going to wait till this dries and we're going to paint it. I've got a little odd black hair in there I'm going to fetch out. But yeah, Bunny herself turned out pretty well. We'll take out that little hair there, that black hair, and then we'll just leave ourselves some of this. I've still got a little bit of pliability in this modeling paste, so if I want to, I can still tilt grass at different angles. getting it to look more irregular, all these little crisscrossing strands help the grass to look natural. So don't have all your grass going in regular directions. You want some of this crisscross. And if you feel like you've gotten a little bit too much, too regular, then you can try to cross some over a little bit more while your putty is still a little bit flexible. Don't go too crazy because you do want it still to look right, but I'm kind of liking this. And I can still take more paste. Actually, this is a good idea. Hold on, I have a good idea I'm going to execute. It will look out of scale for a lot of figures. Because she's a bunny person, I think we can get away with it. Also, yeah, it's more than possible to have this tall grass. Also, remember though, Shadow Raven, I am going to thin this down and trim it down still. I want it to get stuck in before I do that. I've got another dark little hair in there. There. This is why the medical forceps are really a wonderful thing. But yeah, I definitely am going to trim it down a little bit. Although, yeah, as a bunny person, you can get away with longer grass. And I do like that it kind of is giving her a bit of a backdrop. Let me get out that strand there. Just fine-tuning kind of where I'm seeing strands that are really out of place. You just paint it, Kodiak. I mean, it's thin, but it's got body. So use thinned paint and be gentle with it. I'm taking my loose hairs. I'm trying to get all these loose hairs out of here at this point. I can still see a couple that just aren't stuck into the basing material. And that is the problem with this field grass, is it's so fine and it just like, it is a bit of a pain. There, that's better. All right. Usually avoid super glue. Yeah, I don't like the gloss either. I mean, we can paint over it, right? But yeah, especially if you're using it raw, like if you're just going to leave the grass to be this color, for sure. I agree with you, Sinat. That's another thing I really like these modeling pastes from Liquitex. They have a couple of different ones, but they dry matte and they're very paintable over, the white is easily painted. And they set up pretty quick. Like this is actually already setting, which is lovely. And I'm going to actually grab a little more and see if I can mound up. I want to mound up some earth effect back behind. Another thing I can keep this grass looking more organic with is if I mound up the dirt behind it. Now that I've got it kind of setting. So I'm going to dab in just a blob of modeling paste. And then I'm going to grab my clay shaper with the sharp angle. Kind of scooch that bit of random paste inward. This is messy stuff. The modeling paste is like paste. It is very, very messy. But as I press it with this little clay shaper, I can mound up the dirt. It almost looks like snow, right? Especially with the dead grass, colored grass. But I can mound it up. And this helps even more to split this grass up a little more organically, doesn't it? So I'm going to grab a little bit of water on my finger. Really cleaning up the base, I just find that a little bit of water and a finger are the best tool. Or a fingernail in this case. Finger painting, yay! Or finger gluing anyway. Finger pasting? Yeah, like that. So that actually gives us even more from the back, a more interesting and organic form, especially because we've got a little bit of mound here. You could see how you could make snow shapes with this modeling paste pretty easily. Yeah. Bob and Julie are pros. They know all the materials. Bob just likes to pick up random stuff. I'm sure Julie does too. Because longtime sculptors, so they want to use everything that they can get their hands on just to make it a little different. So I like that form. I like how that's working. I've got a little bit of grass sneaking into the front here since I tilted it with putting in that blob. So let me just put a little bit of water into my modeling paste because like I said, I want this stuff to stay good forever, and it's such a huge tub, it's going to take me forever. Unless I start doing weird stuff on canvases or big stuff like CNOT does, it's going to take me forever to go through this tub of modeling paste. Alrighty, so let's get back in here with manipulating this. Yeah, but I mean, you can paint this just like you can paint any basing material. Got this little grass. Come on out, grass. Here, back to plucking. I feel like I'm plucking eyelashes, right? Or eyebrows. Where you're just like taking a little hair and you're just getting it out of there. That's better. And this has definitely made a kind of a gap here, so I'm going to emphasize that gap. Boop. Every time I notice a perpendicular space, I'm going to be playing with that. Let's shove this a little bit. It's still pliable enough that I can break it up, make it more organic looking. Everything I can do to give it a little bit more irregularity and chaos is going to make it look more real. And so I've got grass going at odd angles, so that's key. We're going to trim down a lot of this to be more irregular and a little less tall. Although, as I mentioned, I do like how it's framing her and giving her a backdrop. So I may not trim it as much as I at first thought. It's giving her a nice something to stand against, and I like how that looks. So as far as painting it, by the way, it is up against her, but it's going to be pretty easy to just put a real thin coat of color on this. A lot of these grasses will actually take a wash pretty well. So you can just tint the color. You don't need to like really, really make it different or a solid coat. So, you know, you've got a bit of leeway. So I think I've probably gone about as far as I can with the paste now because it's really starting to settle up and I want to let it set. Yeah. So now I got to ask myself what I want to do on the front. I'm probably going to use shorter grass. So let's actually do a bit of graveling to get some gravel and sand up against this rock here and help disguise it. Now you could use glue or you could use the modeling paste. The gravel will put itself into the modeling paste really well. I do want to be a little selective here and use mostly fine sand because I don't want any of the big rocks really. So if you have your mixes separated out, keeping them separated out can be a good thing. I've still got a couple of bigger rocks in this, but this will help. I do like super glue for this. This is, I tend to use super glue actually for a lot of basing material. Probably a bad habit in some case, but I like how fast it sets. Otherwise it was use white glue. I think you can sometimes be in peril of getting maybe something that looks a little less natural when you do use super glue, just like when we were using the paste back here versus super glue. I feel like you can sometimes, because you don't have any time to really shift it like you can with white glue, sometimes I feel like you get a little bit more of an unnatural effect. So let's get that thin sand in there. And I just want to build it up a little bit. And of course, basing materials, keep a mat or something down under your stuff when you're doing it. Or in my case, I always have this gray paper laid down. That makes it so much easier to just pick up your paper and tilt the excess back into your basing container. Otherwise, basing material does tend to get everywhere. It's just the way that it is. I'm going to put another little bit of, I want to make irregular surface out here where I left the plastic base. Right, my green stuff ran out, so I'm gonna come over here. And that was maybe a little bit too much super glue. If you lay down a little bit too much glue, do take a Kleenex or something and get it out of there. And then you got to get it off of the rim of the base before you start putting your sand on there, or you will be dismayed. I'm just sprinkling this little sand on top here. Now, if you're trying to really do like a deep base, then I recommend actually dipping the entire base into the glue. But as I'm trying to control my basing materials right now, I'm just using little tiny bits of glue, and I'm just sprinkling just a little bit of basing material on there. So I'm trying to do it in a more controlled manner. If I'm doing gaming bases, I'm going to just fill in this entire thing with glue and just dip it in the basing materials. But yeah, so I want to get, the purpose of this is to get some irregular texture. And then beyond this, I can start building it up and putting some bigger rocks on here. Sand and gravel mixes can be good for just getting random, rocks that are kind of in scale for the model. So if I want to use some of my bigger stuff out of this mix, I grab my tweezers. Tweezers are very useful for placing small basing things, chunks of terrain and stuff. So let's flip that rock over because the top part is definitely more interesting. I'm just going to try to play around with placement here. Where do I want this rock? Boop. This rock feels like it might be happy here. A little bit off center. It also enables us to put grass around it growing out, since it often will, preserve moisture in the soil, so you'll get more plant life growing out from underneath a stone or alongside of a stone. Let's get some of this stuff cleaned off. I think I'm going to go for the rock there. I'm going to scooch it around a little bit, but because I cut this notch into her plastic base, I don't know that it's going to go as well. Well, it actually looks pretty good over here too. But it's a little less, it depends. If you're looking for an open ground here to do some more effects or interesting things with, then probably put the rock over on this side. If you are, I think maybe. Remember that having things non-symmetrical, asymmetrical, is going to give you a more interesting piece. And I still have more rocks, so I still could add a couple of other little stones. On the other side if I wanted. Little rock, and I bet I can find an even littler rock. That little rock is very, Just play around. Like, basing is fun. Like, a lot of people shy away from basing because they're like, oh my gosh, so intimidated. But basing is really just fun. Just try to build something that's kind of fun and neat and makes you happy. Like, that's really the core of the hobby, right? Fun and neat and makes you happy should be your primary causes for concern. As far as concerning yourself. The flat side of that is kind of cool. I might be able to put some more grass, longer grass coming out of it. I kind of like that idea. Otherwise, I'm not sold on the shape. I'm just messing around with it. I thought I would like that little angled rock. I'm going to sort through my little rocks here and see if I can find one that I like a little better. This one's bigger. Yeah, I don't think that one's going to be a good call. It's too big. And I may be overthinking this at this point, but who cares? As long as you're having fun. You can build up a lot of rocks if you really want to. Could also put some rocks on her own base here. But I think here, between her feet, if I want to build up irregular texture, I'm actually going to use the modeling paste. And then I'll worry about rocks. So I think I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to put a dab of glue right there and a dab of glue toward the back here. That's going to sink, capillary action is going to take that right down and stick it to the base. So I don't even have to, once I've got the rocks in position, I don't even have to lift them up to put anything underneath them. All I need to do is put that dab of super glue and it will just work. And that's why I like using you don't want to use a super fluid glue. You want to use the medium bodied super glue for this particular thing. If you want that capillary action, obviously a thick gel glue isn't going to do that for you. All right, now let's grab our texture paste again and see if I can put some texture around her feet without messing up. always like to muck around with my bases. I like to make them pretty. So let's see here. Hello, texture paste. How much paint are you going to give me? I'm just going to dab it down here. And then grab my shaper. And I'm just going to muck with this. Like, the nice thing about the shaper here is that it's got such a nice fine point. So I can push this around with it. And I can push it around with the bigger chisel part. But I can get it kind of distributed into pretty fine areas with this taper chisel point here. I think this is actually the angle chisel. Yeah, angle chisel, extra firm clay shaper. Now, when I get too much on there, and it's beginning to get in danger of getting on stuff, then I'll pull back and clean off my tool with a Kleenex. I'm going to start to push it over here. So this lets me get just a little bit of kind of like blobby, like chunky texture onto the surface of this base that was previously very flat. And it's not, I mean, it's something that you can sculpt like and control a little bit more as it starts to set, but really I'm just mostly stippling with the tool. And if I notice any stiff peaks, I want to pull those off. I want to just flatten those down. And one way I can do that is actually by using water. So I'm going to get this kind of spread out, and then I'm going to grab some water on my tool. The water will cause the paste to flatten out a bit, but it will also get rid of some of the peaks if you see like peaks that you don't like. Or the other thing you can do is when you see like something like I've got a kind of a wisp of, you see those little sharp peaks that I've got going on? When I see them, I can flatten them down. But I also could grab my little rock that I was already thinking about putting on this base and use it right on top of one of those peaks. So I can smoosh it. Haha! And I can grab a couple more rocks, because at this point, the paste will fix them in place as it dries. So I can just selectively grab some bits of groundwork and press them down into that paste, and we can get more of an irregular effect on this. Let me grab another rock. Well, I mean, if you, it depends, right? One person's tabletop is different from another person's tabletop. Uh-oh, I made a blob. Now I need to fix that. There, better. Because, like, I mean, on our tabletop, like, sure, that minis got handled a lot, but they seldom got, like, rolled, you know? Whereas if you've got little kids who are, like, tossing dice at the minis, then that would be a different form of tabletop. I mean, I remember I've never done this with this medium before. I've never used the modeling paste before to stick on basing materials. When you've got super glue and you've painted it and it holds up pretty well, it'll slowly, you might lose strands here and there. But overall, it's not bad. So I've managed to make that a little less flat. That's looking nice, actually. We need more grass, but we might have to wait a bit to attach it. But yeah, this is the great thing about these. The metal and the silicone tools is just that this stuff will come right off of it. So, all right. Now, if I really did if I wanted to make sure, and notice how some of my gravel has managed to get back here, and that's actually a good thing. It's like continuing the texture. It's also going to help to anchor the grass. But one of the other things is if I really wanted to make double sure, I could actually wait until this modeling paste dried, and then I could bring in super glue and just put a layer of super glue down. And essentially what the super glue will do is it will capillary around the base of all of these grass strands. It's going to stick them together super hard. Again, that's going to kind of create more standard, like it's going to make your tufts like be really rock hard at the bottom. And it may give you a little less randomness, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Depends on what you want. And it will certainly make sure that it is stuck on well. So yeah. There we go. Pretty happy. Trimming that up a little bit. Pretty happy with the tall grass. Like need a little bit more maybe over here that's a little shorter, but or need to trim down this tuft. So obviously this is a work in progress as you work on various parts of the basing. You're still trying to keep that kind of organic feel. Keep noticing little loose hairs and stuff. Kind of making judgment calls on what I want where. I do have some shorter little hairs over here, which I could trim down a little bit more. No, it depends on how you do it. If you've got like movement trays and you're sticking them down with magnets or something, then obviously you're fine. But if you are like, the grass is definitely more delicate part of the model. However, that said, static grass, totally okay for gaming bases. Like absolutely 100% totally okay. Long grass, a little harder. But we wanted her in a meadow, and so I had to go with some tall grass. And even so, I don't know, I think that with the way that I tend to pack my figures, given I take extra care with my figures and I'm not like moving like huge amounts. But I mean, I do tend to wrap my figures and then put them in a case, and that would probably protect the grass. But we'd see. Maybe not. It would probably slowly have attrition over time. But if she's like your character and you're just packing her as a character to go to a D&D session, I think you could certainly just stick her down. Do it. We used to do at Paint Club and just buy yourself an empty dice cube, stick her down onto the lid of the dice cube, and then put the cube over the top. She is narrow enough to have that done with her. And that totally keeps her surrounded by nothing but air and just stuck down to the base. And that the grass is going to stay perfect at that point. Oh, I always use glue with the sticky tufts. I don't actually rely on the sticky of the tuft because I don't trust it. So I put down a puddle of super glue and then put the sticky tuft in that. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, the Chessex dice cube is, I think, a great way. Like if you did this character as your D&D character and you were carrying it to a game every week, I think that if you use the dice cube, you could absolutely keep it intact and the field grass would mostly stay fine. But if you're doing a whole bunch, like an army like this, then you're gonna notice grass attrition for sure, I'd say. I don't think you're gonna lose necessarily all of it, but I think that you will lose bits of it. I don't know. We'd have to put it to the test. And Ara, you have a lot more experience with these days. I mean, I used to carry a bunch of stuff to Paint Club and gaming and all that kind of thing, but I haven't had to pack stuff for a while. It does depend on how you move it. I think if you're using just the foam trays, those tend to be very rough on figures. All right, so this is looking okay. Like I feel like maybe I need a little bit of extra build up. So when you've got a stone sticking out of the earth, it's usually not just lying on top. It's usually kind of sticking out of the earth, right? So in that case, we've got a couple options. We can use our paste again to try to set up some area, or I can just build up our gravel. So let's do that. Let me put more water into my paste though. The paste is like, whoa, dude. Lots of water. Stay. All right, let's use some glue. And because glue tends to, super glue tends to do the capillary thing anyway, so we don't care if it creeps up the sides of the rocks here. It's actually what we want. So let's do that. Let's actually use our glue's unfortunate abilities. I am going to pop her off of this dice cube, or this wood block though. There. Because I do want to dip her in for this, I think. Take some of the big rocks and shove them to the side to get less of them. They tend to like to hover on top. And then we're gonna experiment. So let's put just a little bit of super glue on the side here, down near the bottom of this rock. And we're gonna dip it in very gently. And then while you still have time, use a metal tool for this. But you do have time to kind of pull some of the stones down and reposition them in the super glue, just like Inara mentioned earlier. You definitely run out of time pretty quickly, but you can do it. So you can shift and you can flatten some of these out, shove them back from the base edge, like so. And it did actually fill in and make it look like the stone is more emerging from the ground than having just dropped on top of it. So let's do that again on the backside here, where you can see we've got a gap there where we need to fill it. So that would be a great place to do this. Now, as we continue, of course, we're going to have wet super glue up front and wet super glue behind, so we may have to be pretty fast with our pokey tool if we get a little out of control here. I like to use just a needle pokey tool or the tip of a sharper sculpting tool for this. But in this case, the pokey tool is perfect. And I mean, just like with paint, you can use a knife to take super glue off your pokey tool. In this case, I have a little bit of a cap of paint on the end of my pokey tool anyway, so I'm not compromising it at all. That's easy to take off. So my super glue is starting to set up when I can't move the gravel anymore. At this point, I can put a little extra pressure on it if I want to scrape it off. There. But then I'll have taken up some of my gravel. So we've used that to fill in a bit of that. And now that rock looks more like it's natural. It's coming up out. You can see where there's lesser gravel around it, and it's coming up out of the earth, which is a nicer effect, a more natural effect than just putting a rock on top of gravel, which is something we see a lot, right? So or you just use the classical way to do this electron hexagon is just to use white glue, just to use either wood glue or white PVA glue. That's what the traditionalists use, but I'm impatient. I've always been impatient with basing, so I've just learned how to use much faster fixing stuff. But if I wanted to really play with stuff, yeah, I would be using something different than this. So I'm going to just grab a little bit here of this and sprinkle it in. So I sprinkled the fresh stuff on top, grabbing whatever I've got, in this case my sculpting tool. I'm going to take that off the top of the stone, reposition it to the sides. So yeah, you've got a couple minutes, maybe you've got a few seconds. You've got maybe 30 seconds, I think, to mess around with super glue. There. Sorry, we're out of focus because I got up higher than I expected to be. Oh, wanted to focus on Pokey Tool. No focusing on Pokey Tool. There. Yeah, you can totally build it up. You definitely do get it to the point where it's way too chunky, though. Like, I'm being pretty fine, pretty controlled with it because I don't want to build it up more. I want it just at exactly that point up, creeping up the side of the rock that I've got in my head. But yes, you can absolutely do more. And I'm going to come at it from the other side as well to build up a little bit more. Again, we're just using capillary action, just putting a little bit of glue there. We're sprinkling a little bit more sand on the side, dumping it off, and then coming back with a tool to make sure that our placement is right. Here it went almost perfectly. There. So that's building up on the side of that. And it looks like it's kind of slapdash, but remember, we're going to paint all this. Like, I always, now some people will just use basing materials raw and they won't paint them. And it always bothers me a little. Like, I feel like the basing materials look weird and out of place, or they look like out of scale even until they're painted. The other reason to do a white glue over the top of all this, by the way, is if you find that the sand just looks a little bit too gritty and you want to fill it in and make it more like a texture paste, to put a thick layer of like white glue, PVA glue over the top of this, you can fill in the tiny gaps and make it look more organic by using the glue and letting it dry. And it will also serve to seal on your basing materials a little bit. Although paint will do the same thing in that case, pretty much, but still. So let's see here. Do I want to put a little gravel up top between her paws? I think maybe I do. I've got a little bit of it creeping up there. Everywhere we can... dirt and gravel from outside tends to have organic stuff on it that can rot or mold. So if you clean, like if you make sure it's relatively clean, like if you find a stone like by the ocean side and you want to use it and it's in scale, like sure, just clean it, scrub it, bits of shell, stuff like that. But if you've got like wood can have bugs in it and stuff like that. So you want to make sure to treat it. I've heard the oven technique for that, just putting it in the oven, to kill whatever's on it. You can use outside materials. I mean, Michael Proctor walks around Colorado picking up basing materials, moss and wood and bark and rocks, you name it. I've never been a fan of cat litter because it always seems out of scale to me. Like, I can spot cat litter on a base a mile away because it's just usually I'm sure there are really good ways to use it. I'm sure there are like pro basers who like totally make cat litter look like natural ground, but everybody who I've ever seen using it is just like, it looks terrible. Yeah, well, Bob's a pro. But it's never something I recommend. Like, it's a basing material like any other, but it tends to be higher particle, like bigger particle. And you usually want something a little bit finer for 28 mil. If you're doing bigger models, then it's different. But yes, certainly there are people who will put the lie to that. I just personally don't like the look. And I most times I see cat litter used, I don't see it used well, in my opinion. But it's still cat litter. You can use cat litter if you want to. I won't penalize you for it if it looks good. Just make sure it looks good. If I come along and see huge chunks of cat litter on your base and you haven't done any work to like blend it in with your basing materials, I'm going to kind of give you that look. That you used cat litter look. All right, so I like that. So I've carried my gravel texture up into between her paws now, and I've got a little bit of it sitting in the back too. And all of this is going to give me a really kind of cool, organic, lumpy, natural look for her basing, which I like. I've also left some kind of holes here, and those are actually to put static grass in. I can also fit some field grass if I wanted to. And now I sprayed gravel everywhere. You will have some loose gravel, inevitably. I try to give it time to set up with the super glue so I don't knock any off that I really don't want to go missing. But once it's set, you definitely can tap it, have your excess gravel kind of fall off. But I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. I think once we paint it up, it's going to look really good. Bottom line is you can use whatever basing materials you want. Remember that a tiny bit goes a very long way. I mean, this is like a couple of bags of like I don't know if this is what GW still puts out, but I used to really love their sand and gravel mix. I love the variance in the stones. And so I used this stuff for a long time, and I have a bunch of it, and it's lasted me 20 years, and it's not gonna be used up anytime soon, unless you're doing big basing projects like terrain. That's when you start to really go through a lot of basing products, when you're starting to do big dioramas. All right. Sweet. Just kind of like picking, sometimes unfortunately you get rocks with glue on them that fall into your basing mix, or something will come off, and then it makes big chunks of sand like this. I usually just toss those out. I don't want one inadvertently. I like to leave the modeling paste for like half an hour for a soft cure. It's already, if I take my my tool, it's kind of flaky right now. See how the powder's coming off when I see those little bits of powder that came off when I scraped it? So right now, the edges are pretty tight. It's a little softer in the thicker parts, so it's still going to take a little bit. I'd probably give it an hour. I mean, when I do basing materials, if I want to be really, really sure, I'll give them a couple hours, because then you know it's set. This is why it's good when you're doing basing to have other projects to work on while you're waiting for things to set up. It's why we might go work on Kitty Cat for a little bit. Super glue sets up much faster. It's already hard. Like I need to give the super glue a little more time to dry though, because underneath is where it can still stay tacky. And if you stick a brush in there, you're wrecking your brush. So you don't want to do that. Yeah, we invoked the green users. Yeah, he crushes, right. Bob uses the clay cat litter and crushes and cuts it to shape, which is more than what most people. I was dissing cat litter a little bit earlier, Julie. But yeah, that's just it. If you can make it not look like cat litter, if you can make it so that I can't tell it's cat litter, awesome. But I see so many people buy the cat litter that's like chunky and they don't do anything to it, and it just is big lumps on the base, and then worse, sometimes they won't paint it, so you can totally tell that it's cat litter and it smells like cat litter. So like, don't be that person. If you're going to use cat litter, please be the Bob Rodolphe of the world. This is my personal plea to you. All right, so this is pretty good. Let's see. I'm going to put a little bit more gravel like right back here in this little hole. Yeah, that's always the joke, right? Kroniko, use unused cat litter. Yeah, I have Woodland Scenic stuff. I find that the GW sand is a little bit finer than the fine ballast, which is why I do this. But I also have a mix of fine, medium, and coarse ballast from Woodland Scenics that I also use and have been perfectly happy with. Gonna put a little blob of glue right in here. I do like the Zap-A-Gap kind of needle nose little applicator. Loctite also has this kind of long, narrow super glue applicator. It can be nice. If you don't have a super glue applicator like that, just try using your pokey tool or something to get a dab of super glue on it and then spread it. The pokey tool is a multi-tool. It's not a unitasker. Whatever Alton Brown may say, the pokey tool is not a unitasker. Today we have used the Reaper pokey tool to reposition gravel, to spread glue, to spread paste, and I haven't yet used it to unclog a bottle just because we haven't been painting. So I hereby challenge you, but via the Alton Brown ruling, I would say that the pokey tool is not a unitasker, despite its name. Yeah, this is older. I'm not sure if they still have it, Corsair. If I had a bag of it, I would show you, but it's this color. Sorry, this color is not showing up well. There, it's that color. And it's got a mixture of these like bigger rocks and the really fine sand, and like just do a visual comparison. It's very close, and like I said, I use the Woodland Scenics mix as well, so it's not like it's totally. I don't feel like Woodland Scenics is out of scale or anything. I just like a little bit finer sand for 28 millimeter. If you're painting bigger stuff mostly, then I would say that the Woodland Scenics is just peachy. They might have an ultra fine ballast. I don't know. I remember the fine ballast being just a little bigger than this. So your mileage may vary. Check it out. I have not touched base with anybody on the Painting Big Pokey tool, so don't expect it to be a thing anytime soon, Shadow Raven, sadly. It's just not a priority right now. I've got so much on my plate already. It's more trouble. I don't need more stress. So I don't need another thing to track in my life right now. I've got a con coming up at the end of this month, and that's stressing me out too. So that's the thing about being like freelance is you do get extra stress when you get schedule disruptors. So the most likely scenario is for me to talk to somebody about it when I am at ReaperCon. Yeah, it scales nicely. Yeah, you're right. Electron hexagon, because then when you've got big monsters, dragons, war machines, you can scale up to the slightly bigger materials and scale down for smaller things. Yeah, I could see how it would scale really nicely with the system they've got. Like I said, I've used it. I've used it on armies. I just, I do love this stuff, so I like the grade of it. I love the varying grades, and I like the mix. I don't know. I've got both. I bought a ton of Woodland Scenic stuff back in the day, and of course, in the nature of Woodland Scenic stuff, it came in giant tubs, so I still have a bunch of it. Yeah, it does narwhal. If I'm allowing myself to work on my own projects, then mini painting is a de-stressor for me. I painted last night. Those on my Patreon, if you're on the Discord, you saw me post up my Bard Sung character work in progress. So last night I was de-stressing by working on my little Bard Sung turtle character. She's in the other room. I can fetch her if you want. So let's let this sit for a second. I'll go and NMM Twisted Oma, but it is it's full. That class is full. And then Choosing Colors, which is my color theory class, and that was not full last I checked. 1 second, let me go and fetch a turtle. So this is the start of a speed paint. So this is the Turtle Druid or Wild Shaper. I don't remember what they call it. But it's about 2 hours. And I've finished the actual turtle bits. So now I can do all the accoutrements. But it's cute. Anyway, that's from the Bard Sung board game. So that's what I was doing to relax last night. The other things I do to de-stress are usually playing video games with David, but he was playing some WoW last night, so I was like doing other things. There we go. And I read. I read to distress. I'll get a good mystery novel or science fantasy mostly. I don't read a lot of science fiction anymore. But I need to put my remaining field grass back in the package. There we go. Now I have a smaller tuft that I can use at some point. We bought it entirely. I mean, we'll play it, but we bought it for the minis. We don't buy board games these days unless they have great minis. Speed painting board game minis is one of the things David does to take a break from like competition painting and work and to de-stress, and so I've kind of picked that up from him. I'm putting more work into this character because I'm planning to play it, so like I want to put a little extra work into her. But I still plan for her to be a speed paint, like under 4 hours of work total when done. We pick and choose. We've got one of the Zombicide games, but I just don't like the game that much. So we've got the Black Plague edition one of that. But it's just disappointing to me. There aren't enough special items and stuff like that. So Bardsong looks like far more my type of game because it's got so many different treasures you can find and different encounters, and the maps are, like they're built as you play. So it's got replay value and stuff like that. So it seems like it'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah. I find that if I do it in the evening, it helps me get to sleep. Like reading before bed has become a thing for me again, Electron, because I do some physical therapy and stuff for my back before bed, and so I can read while I'm doing long stretches, essentially. And I read a little bit just at the end of the night in general. So that's when I fit my reading in. I used to always do, when I was in Texas, because of the weather, I would, for like half the year, I'd be inside doing treadmill for my exercise in the evening. And that was prime reading time. Like reading on the treadmill was where I fit it in. But now it's so beautiful where I live now. Like for the majority of the year, I don't have a treadmill anymore and I'm out walking outside. So I had to like figure out where reading would fit in. I also did myself a favor and joined a writing and reading meetup group. And we have book club. So it's going to make me read one new book once a month at least. So that has helped me to prioritize some reading time. No. I could play WoW on my treadmill, but I could not paint minis. I already read Anne Perry, actually. Thanks. She's good. Yeah, the only thing I didn't like about Steamforged is that the plastic that they used to use was like a cut under, but the plastic on this one is good. I had to remove some mold lines from Turtle, but in general, she's got nice detailing. Like, it was pretty good. The casting was pretty good. It was better than I've seen from them before. So, but yeah. So cool. All right, so we've given us some time to dry. Now I need to stop and think about what kind of color I want the basing to be. She's in a meadow. I'm going to test this by pressing it, and the grass seems like it is firmly set. So now, if I'm going to trim it a little bit more, now would be a good time. So I do want to take a little bit away from her back. I do like it a little tall, though. I kind of like it framing her, so I think I'm going to leave it taller on the one side. I'm going to trim it down a bit on this side. A few hairs here, a few hairs there. Get it a little shorter on one side, keep it a little longer on the other. I got some gravel kind of up into it. Need to get that out. Washes are really a good thing for treasure hoards, Steph and Mac, or doing just dry brushing and picking out details afterwards. I think that maybe dry brushing and then doing a wash to kind of kill the texture might be like kind of the chosen way to avoid losing your sanity on dragon hoards. So when I press down, I got a little bit of give on my putty right there. So it's not quite set yet. I could still alter stuff. And here, I might want to take some and push them back and others to push them forward. Remember not to just vary your side by side, but also your front and back. So I'm leaning different parts forward. And now that my putty's getting close to set, I'm manipulating it a little bit more with a little more confidence. I know it's not going to the grass isn't going to fall out at this point. I can still make some stuff go back and some stuff go forward. So I like that. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, no, I would paint it in masses. I did a little bit of that on Rocky. Way back we were doing Treasure Rocky before I totally got sick of him. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go like a dark brown for the basing, and then to bring it up with dry brushing and side brushing into more of a dusty brown with some golden tops. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think the dirt in a meadow, usually you don't see it, but if it's stony, it does tend to be pretty dark. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get a picture. Dirt in a meadow. Ta-da! All I needed to do was Google dirt in a meadow. So essentially a lot of variance, but it definitely comes up to a lighter brown if it's not, let's see, some of it, that's red. That's Oklahoma. That's very high iron content. More often you're probably looking at more like this. And that's there's some dead grass in there as well. But there's a little bit of darker dirt also. So a lot of this is actually, the dirt is actually that color, that darker brown. And then you've got the dead grass here. And then green grass here. So we can use this to our advantage. Let's see here. So I tended to start dark. In this case, I think I might do a wash of brown liner over everything. I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to say, all right, I think things are probably set up enough that I can do this. So we'll grab our brown liner. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you know what? I think I'm going to put a drop of oxide brown in there. So I want to just make a good organic soil color. Oxide brown will go into a much richer brown when it interacts with black. So putting a drop of that in there is going to make my brown liner a little lighter and a little more richer brown. Then I want my... Oh no, did I bring my... I must have taken my my brush-on sealer to the other room. No! I may need to go fetch it. Yeah, need brush-on sealer. 1 sec. Yeah, I want to use brown liner because I want some of this stuff to show through. It really doesn't matter. I just want to I want to unify it all. So putting a color over the top makes sense. Yeah, Ed does love his house brush painting. There we go. So remember to shake your sealer until you can't see the beads on the bottom anymore. That way you know most of the matting agent is in solution. So I'm going to put 3 drops of brown liner, and I'm going to put a couple drops of water. I don't want this to be... too thin. I want it to be a pretty heavy wash. And put my tools back down here and get them out of the way. Get my scissors put away here. The nice thing about an art desk is having the tray underneath for my flat tools. And I want to get, if I've got extra sand hanging out, I want to get rid of that too. I'm actually going to paint first, and then I'm going to put down some static grass. And then we'll paint the static grass and the field grass. That's what my aim is. And I need a nice big fat brush that isn't going to be too fussy on me. Let's use, first I need to use my mixing brush to mix this up. So I can show you guys the consistency I'm kind of aiming for. I think this is about right. So, kind of thick wash. I think maybe one more drop of water. I want there to be unifying color, but I don't want it to be too strong. So I'm going to try that. And I'm going to use my crappy mixing brush to kind of apply it over the super glue just in case. So I start really dark, but then I'm going to bring this way, way up with a lot of kind of dry brushing, side brushing, stippling, and stuff like that. We even got a little bit of green stuff here, but I'm not worried about it. Using my crappy brush to deal with the areas where I put down super glue just in case there's still fresh super glue. I'm going to paint over the rocks. Just kind of unify all my groundwork. When I have to get closer to the toes, I want to switch to a better brush so that I don't totally screw up the paint job I've done. You know I love blue liner, but I don't love it for base work. Sorry. Sorry, trash. I do use a lot of blue liner. I used it just this week or last. No, I was using it on the Centaur. We'll get this brown laid out back here. And I'm going to kind of jam it in around the bases of the grass here. Capillary action will take it in there a little bit. So I'm kind of making big puddles and letting the grass pull them up. Acrylic markers. The problem with markers is that they bleed, but I've not experienced acrylic markers, so I'm not sure. I do not know chemically what an acrylic marker, quote unquote, is. And that is the question. Is like chemically, what is it? Because the word acrylic is tossed around a lot these days. And I'm interested to know exactly what that means. Because a marker typically uses ink. But if it's using acrylic inks now, and you've dispensed with the bleed, and it's using ultrafine pigments, maybe? But the thing with markers is they lay down a super thin, like, layer, right? And that's not going to cover. It might be useful for shading if you can thin it with a brush, but other than drawing freehand with it, Narwhal, assuming the tips are fine enough, I'm not sold. There we go. There's right in focus. So we've gotten our groundwork unified. I still have a little bit of different colors showing through here and there. I'm okay with that. And it didn't quite take over my putty back here. But just to show you guys, you can take this wash color and you can paint it onto the grass there. See, I've got this kind of these darker areas coming up. Like I mean, you can paint the grass just fine. I'm gonna paint a little bit more down here. So get kind of a base on it there that's a different color. Sometimes you'll pop little strands off, that's fine. So I'm using a wash to just kind of paint the bottom. And to make it much more irregularly colored, see? Notice how that's already looking more like organic, more like it's actually growing out of the ground. I'm going to put some greens over this too, but having the dark ground at the beginning is kind of nice. Like so. Oh no, it does not go clear. Some of them are clear, like there are different mediums, different pastes and different gels. And some of them will go translucent. And some will not. So since these are really made for building up texture on artist canvas, I'm just messing around with them on miniatures because I think they could be useful. So it really, the name of the game at that point is just exploration. You know, we don't know what we could do with it. We can try to do all sorts of things with it. But I personally don't mind the white because I know I'm going to be painting it over. I'm just using it like any other putty. It's just like using green stuff. You know you're going to paint over it. See that dark shadow that I can establish on the grass behind her. Look out for, yeah. I mean, look out for bleed too. Be aware that your marker work should be the last thing you do. And if you put a sealer over the top, it may reactivate the marker, depending on what the marker is made of. What the ink is. There were a lot of people, there was a real movement back in when I was painting Golden Demons eons ago, where people were using the micron pens to do eyes and freehand, and it worked just fine, but you had to know not to seal and not to put anything over the top of it afterwards, or it would bleed and blur and discolor. So we've got some nice start there. I've just blocked in some shadows, blocked in our basing. You can see how we are starting to look like we are in an actual place with Ms. Bunny. She's looking pretty cool, actually. Now I went dark with the ground because she's lighter. So I didn't want to go I didn't want to go light with the ground because it would be too close to her fur, essentially. And I wanted her paws to stand out. So that's why I started doing a darker ground. And now I can work this up. Now, I actually think I'm going to work this up first with a gray. So I'm going to have to throw some things off here. I'm piling up stuff over here. random crap is piling up on my stuff. Let's see here. What kind of gray do I want to use? I could use a bone color. Could use cloudy gray, but if I do that, I'm going to mix it with something. Yeah, I'm going to use cloudy. I'm going to mix it with brown liner. Yep. But that's how it always starts. Like, it always starts for me with a dark ground color. Yeah, but that's the nature of the beast. Like, that's just, like, what markers are about. Shadow Raven, because they are inks. Inks bleed. So if there is really an acrylic marker set that uses the new acrylic inks, those would be impervious to bleeding. But I don't know anything about that, so it's not something I had run across until it was just mentioned on this stream. So I'm using cloudy gray, but I'm mixing in some brown liner. You can see that I'm mixing that in because I want it to go a little bit more in harmony with my starting color, and also I want it to be a browner stone color. So we do want some stone colors. We're going to be working up some stuff dark brown. I'm going to be working with some stippling here on my little rock because it has texture. This is still a little bit, the brown is still a little bit wet here and there, so I like to put a gray down and then put a brown over the top and then to continue with successive layers. But I do like to have that touch of gray, especially for the stones. And I mean, the surrounding earth is just like stones that have worn down. So I like to get a little touch of a different, just not all brown. I think it looks, again, a little bit more organic, a little more natural. I'm just using a round brush to kind of do some side brushing here to... My ground isn't even fully dry yet, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with there being a bit of mixing going on. It's basing, so it doesn't have to be perfect and crisp and awesome. I can be messy. There we go. But that's not, like, sad to say. That's a standard technique, Corsair. Like, you follow in the footsteps of some pretty rad painters doing that. I mean, it's like that's I mean, some really good painters like still do it that way. Don't think like that's a substandard technique or something. Just because I do it different doesn't mean that it's not like... that doing it that way is not established. That's totally respectable. Totally respectable way to paint a mini. Let's see. So we got some of that gray is starting to come up. But I don't want to bring it all up, and I don't want this ground to go gray. Yeah, I think it's a solid approach. Yes, what you said, Kirst. Yeah, they're both standard. Like, it's standard. You'll see people like I do where I'll paint the skin and then I'll do the eye. But you'll also see plenty of people who just put down the base color of the face, then paint the eye, then touch up around the eye. And both of those are, like, absolutely viable approaches to painting eyeballs. Just because you see me do something doesn't mean there's not an equally awesome way to do it. Like, I'm definitely, like, set in my ways on some techniques where they just work for me and I just do them. But that doesn't mean that if you do it different, that your way is not the best way. I mean, every mini painter you talk to another mini painter, they'll tell you a different way to do something. And so that always holds true. I'm going to add in some gray around here. So you can see how I'm starting to bring up details and bring out just a little bit. I'm mostly kind of stippling with the side of the tip of my brush. So stippling being kind of dotting. I'm just trying to pick up a little bit of this texture. I'm not trying to like hit it all. I don't want everything to go gray. I want to still have some of that brown, those brown colors. And I'm going to be bringing this up with even lighter browns. Probably shield brown is going to be next. And you can just like stipple and kind of do streaky colors and just keep it irregular on your base. It does not need to be like super neat because it's dirt. So just kind of stipple it and have fun and play with different colors over it. And if you have different surfaces, paint them differently. I'm going a little heavier on my gray over the surface of the putty that I did. Yep, we are all about that on this stream. The best approach is the one that works. Like, we have this saying also in dogs where, like, it's about, like, dog products in general, although a lot of people use it to talk about dog food, which is the best food in the world is not the best food in the world if your dog doesn't do well on it. And it's the same with painting. The best technique in the world is not the best technique for you if you have better success with something else. We are all individuals. And art, which is what we're doing, is a very individual thing. So, never think you're doing it wrong if you like your results. If you don't like your results, then do experiment. Try other things. But don't go into that with whole like, hey, I think I'm doing it wrong. Go into it with a, well, this isn't working for me and I'd like to try something new. Mindset is everything. Alrighty, let's go up to the next brown color. Where's my shield brown? Nope, that's ruddy leather. Did I leave you out here, shield brown? Are you up here somewhere? Did I eat my shield brown? Did I take it in the other room? Nope, it was hiding. So shield brown, I think, is a very, because it's got a little bit of gray to it, but it's also kind of a yellowy brown. I find that it's a really good ground color generator. Oh, a blue jay is out on my back. Oh, maybe not a blue jay. This is a weird bird, guys. It doesn't have a crest. It's bright blue. It does have white, like, down its front. It has, like, stripes coming down on either side. Oh, man, I wish I could get a picture of this bird for you. Super bright blue. It is big, like a jay, but it doesn't have the crest, and the beak is wrong. The beak's longer. Super bright blue. Like, bright sapphire blue bird. But it didn't have the black and white like markings I'm used to on a jay either. I want it to go back on the fence so that I can find it. Scrub jay? I'll look that up. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that might be it. Yeah, that's it. That's the bird. Because it has those markings that go down here. And then the white. Oh, wow. There's so... Look at that blue. Like, that's the blue I just saw on the fence. That made me stop everything, right? Yeah, it was a scrub jay. It's because I recognized it had these little lines of blue coming down on both sides. And it didn't have the crest, and see how it has the longer beak? So yeah. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I had never seen these before. They're so pretty, and they're big. Sorry, I love birds. Super pretty blue. Okay, so if we were going to paint this, we would totally do, I think brilliant blue and cyan blue. Yeah, it was a California scrub jay. It had that bright, bright blue, that deep, vivid blue with the two little stripes of color coming down. Neat! Makes me want a bird feeder. Oh, so I should get them peanuts? I have thought about getting a bird feeder. I just know that the squirrels would be all over it. I'd have to get one of the spinning ones that totally flings the birds off of it, but we don't really have a good tree for it. Not where I could watch. Like, I'd have to get a pole. I'd have to get a pole for it with an arm and then get the spinning bird feeder that flings the squirrels off. Railing stick thingy. Yeah, it's just a beautiful bird. I had not seen one. I had not seen that bird before. Beautiful. That color, man. Now I know, because I've been seeing flashes of blue. I would see a flash of blue every once in a while around our neighborhood, and I'm like, that's not a blue jay, because I'm used to blue jays. I've seen them plenty. But yeah, it definitely makes me, we have some really cool birds around here. It makes me want to get a bird feeder for sure. Maybe I could hang it off of our lemon tree, because that's right outside of our big patio. Oh, nice. Yeah, I do love, birds are difficult to draw and paint. So if she's a bird illustrator, like, major props, because it's not easy to, like, portray feathers. And so I'm going to take this brown and I'm going to very lightly like brush it over the top of some of this basing material. I do want to go a little heavier if I want to knock back the dark shading. The fact that I started very dark. I will need to go a little heavier at this point. If I lose a lot of my gray, I can bring it back in. I'm going to leave some little divots of darker earth. As we start to bring up our details. Yeah, I like the jay. I mean, my squirrels are cute too, but I mean, I don't want them to eat all the birds' food, and I know that they're fatties, and they totally will. It's kind of why I have held off. Bring my gray back in a little bit. I'm also letting just the gray and the brown mix on my brush a bit here and there. I'm not concerned with pure color here. Yeah, you should, Stephen Mac. Although that sounds like maybe my my blue friend, my blue bird friend here, my scrub jay friend, might be too heavy for that bird feeder. He or she, I think he, because very, very bright colored, but maybe not, was very large. All right, so now I want, you can see how I've got a nice mix of grays and browns here. Oh, time check. Dang. You're right, Quindy. We got all distracted. I had to get my walk. All right, so you guys totally got Ann overtime today. Ann overtime. But we've set this up nicely, and now our challenge is to bring up the earth, to add in the grass as well, and to bring that up with some nice green and gold colors. And just like with my field grass, I'm actually starting with a brown grass here for our static grass. So we're going to start with kind of like a browny color. We're going to bring it up toward green, and then we're going to top it off with kind of a beige, a gold beige color for the end. So I like the idea of bringing in some greenish tones because she's got pink, and so it's going to make those pink tones really pop. All right, so that's the plan for next time, and this is what we've managed to do today. We've actually gotten a nice little base coming. Thanks for hanging out, and yeah, it's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. Yee! Have a great one, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.